Nastiest / craziest divorce cases on Reddit Part 3. Lawyers of Reddit, what is the nastiest / craziest divorce case or cases that you've handled? Child of now divorced parents. Not going into detail about all the messed up stuff, but here is one thing: my dad was screwed over by mom that really hurt. The day after 9/11 happened, about 2 years before the divorce, my dad went into New York City. We lived near enough to get there by train, and looked around for snow globes of the city which showed the Twin Towers, like what they sell to tourists, because he knew that they would stop manufacturing one with the towers. He thought it would be cool, and potentially valuable, to have them. He ended up bringing home 3 fairly large ones he found. Maybe half the size of a basketball each. He figured one day, he might give one to my brother, one to me, and keep one for him and my mom. But for now, he put one in his office, one in my mom's office, and one in their bedroom. About 2 years later, my grandmother, mom's mom, came to visit for a week. She commented on the pre-9/11 snow globe in my parents' bedroom and asked if she could have it. My dad, thinking his marriage was fine, thought family is fine, and as a nice gesture, gave it to her. A week later, he got the divorce papers. My mom was secretly talking to her mother and a lawyer recommended by her mother to get the best divorce outcome possible. Dr. My mom's mother asked my dad for a somewhat prized possession right before my mom filed for divorce. I live in Brazil, and my fiancée is an assistant to the judge. She was telling me this case and it made me really sad. Some dude was driving a truck that was overweight capacity and poorly maintained. The truck malfunctioned somehow. He crashed, went into a coma. Dude woke up a couple days later in the hospital and found an ex-girlfriend by his side. She said she'd heard about the accident and that she was there to take care of him. Dude was in the hospital for a really long time and wasn't quite himself in the first couple of weeks, not sure if due to substance abuse or due to some injury from the accident. Since he was restrained to the hospital, someone had to take care of his business. He had to apply for paid disease absence with the INSS, which is the equivalent to U.S. Social Security, amongst other things. So, he gave his ex power of attorney. She took care of all those things for him. She even got an actual attorney to sue the truck owner, his employer, on his behalf. Dude got stuck in a wheelchair after the accident. When he left the hospital, they parted ways on good terms. Dude found some girl, fell in love, moved in together. A year later, his lawsuit ended. He won a small amount as restitution, about $30,000 US. Brazil doesn't have punitive damages, plus a lifetime pension. Not a week later, he was surprised by divorce papers. Ex-girlfriend that took care of him used her power of attorney to marry him without his knowledge. She heard he had won the lawsuit, asked for half the restitution plus half his lifetime pension. The marriage had been conceived under obviously fraudulent means, and thus would be easily voided, had the dude's lawyer realized that and requested the marriage to be voided. He didn't, and the judge is forbidden by law to grant something that wasn't requested. So, the marriage remained valid, which means she was entitled to half his earnings. I was a family law attorney for years. It is nasty all the time, which is why I finally switched to a different area. The nasty one. 1. Parental alienation cases just make you want to hurt someone. Those poor kids are brainwashed. It is beyond cruel. Had one where the little kid was so brainwashed she would scream at the top of her lungs if she even saw a picture of the other parent. Everyone knew she was brainwashed, but the options are few when the kid is so messed up. Are you really going to force the kid to live with a parent they hate? These cases mess you up. 2. Had several where dad didn't care about ever seeing his kids, but grandmother wanted him to get some custody out of principle and was bankrolling to destroy her. The silly one. 1. Had a 10-hour mediation over who ends up with a few dirty pans that originally came from Walmart. By the end I almost waived the fee to buy my client new pans to end the pain everyone else had to endure. 2. Had a divorce where they still lived together because neither wanted to move. I believe they still live together several years later. They hated each other, so I don't understand, but their choice. 3. Most clients destroy their own case / make the judge hate them by being terrible. I have had to tell them to shut up more times than I can count. This part, most clients destroy their own case/make the judge hate them by being terrible. So my brother is in a custody dispute with his ex-wife. The ex-wife moved a new boyfriend into the place she was living, which was ex's father's house. The father didn't like the boyfriend and kicked him out. Ex went with boyfriend, but she had primary custody of the kids and no place to stay. She was living in the car with her boyfriend, so she left the kids at my brother's house. While giving up a place to stay might seem unreasonable, making sure your kids have an appropriate place to stay is a sign of being a good mother. She's really not, but for other reasons. So when a friend lets her and boyfriend move and she asks for the kids back, my brother won't hand them over, even though she has a legal order for custody. She threatens to call the cops. My brother calls my mom for advice. Mom tells him to let her call the cops, because it will prove to the judge that he thinks his ex is a terrible enough mother that he won't give the kids back without police intervention. It took me 10 minutes to convince my mom that that is not the way to get on the judge's good side. The judge is going to see that 1. Ex was a responsible adult in making sure her kids had a place to stay, and 2. Brother is a prick who is disrespecting his ruling and can't be trusted to behave like an adult. You don't piss off the judge. Brother finally handed over the kids without police involvement when he realized that he had a bench warrant for his arrest for failing to appear after getting arrested for breaking and entering an assault. You can see that my brother is not a good person either. This stems from my brother breaking into the house of a 16-year-old family member while his parents weren't at home and physically threatening the kid and refusing to leave, because the kid slept with the ex after the divorce. Brother thought that if he paid his bail, that's all the consequences he had to deal with. It wasn't exactly divorce, just child support from an unwed mother. The woman insisted that the guy was the father of her baby. DNA said otherwise. I guess she didn't know who all of the guys she'd slept with were, so she went after her ex-boyfriend instead. Edit. Worst actual divorce I know of wasn't one I was involved in, it was a relative whose ex-wife cheated on him. She keeps going back to the court and insisting that he hid a bunch of assets somewhere. He was a factory worker his whole life, all of his income was well documented, she was a housewife, she didn't have any income ever, there are no secret stashes of cash, she just likes to try to wreck his life with more legal bills. Maybe someday the courts will stop her from filing without any credible evidence, but not so far. As a fraud examiner, retired now, I had to look at my share of court cases. In one case, the unwed mother had DNA tests done on 4 or 5 guys and still didn't find the father. We also have one locally who was too drunk to remember anything about the guy. My suggestion that she could at least narrow it down to the approximately 13 million guys on the island was not met with happiness. Not strictly divorces, but my family law professor had some good stories. Story 1. Client calls. Hi, can I kick my pregnant girlfriend out of the house? You really shouldn't do that. But can I? Legally speaking? Since you never married and the home is in your name, yes, you can legally exclude her, but you really freaking shouldn't. Thanks. I need you to explain that to someone. Client opens the door, where police are getting ready with a ram, hands cell phone to a police officer. Story 2. Unmarried mom comes in and asks. So, what do I have to do to get his house? You really shouldn't be getting married if you're already planning to end the relationship. Yeah, but what do I have to do? Well, if you're married and leave in the home, it becomes a matrimonial home and you have an equal right to possession upon divorce. Thanks. Client calls again. He wants me to sign a prenup. Well, this would limit what you would be able to get in a divorce and it doesn't really give you anything. Why are you getting married if both you and he know that you're only in it to get his house? Okay, so I shouldn't sign it? Client calls again. Okay, we're married now, but he won't let me move in. Family law is crazy. A guest speaker in that course was beaten up by thugs for a ruling he made in a high-profile arbitration case. I have a friend, an only child, whose parents died when she was a young woman. They left her their house. A young guy at the office quickly stepped up to help her get over her grief. He told her he'd look after her, so they got married. 3 children and 10 years as a housewife later, When the baby was 4 months old, he left her for another woman, saying she'd gotten too fat. During the divorce he asked to split their assets but gave her custody of the kids. He got the odd weekends visitation. Somehow, I don't know how, he got the court to agree that she should sell her parents' home and give him half the proceeds. She ended up with the 3 kids and enough money to buy half a house. Let me reiterate, she was a housewife with a toddler whose office admin skills were 10 years old. The ex-husband skips a lot of weekend visitations because his new wife doesn't like kids. I've never understood how that could happen. I had a few. One woman had her husband served with the divorce papers while he was in hospital undergoing cancer treatment. He had no idea she wanted a divorce. One guy wanted a provision in his divorce that said his sons couldn't watch NASCAR because the wife's new boyfriend was into NASCAR. In the same case, the property division was so contentious that the judge had the parties list every piece of furniture in the house and try to work through who would get what. The guy made sure that he wanted everything she did, down to things like lace doilies her grandma made and some trophy she won in a women's shooting competition. I bought her the gun, so it's pretty much my trophy. Another guy wanted no custody and no visitation with his 4 sons until he learned how much child support would be. Then he wanted full custody with no visitation for the wife in the hope that she'd have to pay him child support. I only did divorces for about a year before I moved on to mortgage foreclosures. Those are far less depressing. I just had lunch with a lawyer friend of mine and he told me this crazy story. When he was an intern, there was this divorce case where the woman was demanding her husband for child support. It was in a small city in Bolivia's highlands and both the husband and wife were shepherds. Anyways, the husband asked the judge for a medical examination of his genitalia. Turns out the husband was actually a woman. She was raised by her grandparents and they respected her preferences. For the rest of the community she was a boy. After her grandparents died she inherited the land and after some time the neighbor offered her to marry his daughter, without knowing the guy was actually a girl. She accepted and once she was married she came to an agreement with her wife, they will be married but they won't be intimate with each other. After a while the wife got a lover and had 3 kids, the husband took them as his/her own. Some years passed and the relationship got really deteriorated so the husband asked for a divorce. Things got ugly and he or she ended up telling the truth in order to avoid paying child support. My parents' divorce was finalized on September 2014, but the separation of assets is still opened. The short of it is that my dad has always been really jealous. About 2 years ago my dad got it in his head that my mom was cheating with a baker/police officer in our hometown, Mexico. He hired 2 guys to watch her 24/7. They confirmed that she was cheating and said they had a video. Well, $8,000 and my dad's sanity later, there's no video and my dad is mentally ill. He hired someone else to eliminate this baker/police officer. Thankfully they too just took his money and did not do the job. He started going to brothels and harassing women. He said he would leave my mom on the streets and has attempted to pay off judges. My dad was always a good hard-working man, now he is someone I don't know. Some say it's a midlife crisis, but the guy is 65 years old. I feel if it was a crisis it should have happened years ago. DR. My dad thinks he lives in a Colombian novella. My grandparents' divorce. I refused to help them with it or get involved. I think my only advice was to burn all of their possessions. It was truly awful. It went on for at least 4 years. My grandfather was a shopping addict and hoarder and my step-grandmother left the minute that they ran out of cash. They then proceeded to fight about every object in their hoard, all while both being in the middle of passing. Grandma because of cancer and Alzheimer's and Grandpa of diabetes and kidney failure, so it wasn't like they had some grand plan about how someone was going to use any of these objects. They owned basically nothing of actual value. My grandfather was just awful and wouldn't let her go. Did she know she was leaving? Not sure, and wrote her nasty letters weekly. After my grandfather died, my family threw away or donated virtually every last hammer, hat and book they fought over. What a waste of time and energy their whole divorce fiasco was. I'm sure they greatly annoyed their respective attorneys greatly. Yes. Finally my moment to shine. A mother, U.S. citizen, who took her child from Argentina and ran back to the U.S., child born in Argentina. I represented the Argentine father/husband. Federal court, Argentine government got involved, made the news in Buenos Aires. We won and had the child returned to the father in Argentina. Also represented a woman who was convinced that her husband had implanted micro-robots into her brain and was trying to control her. She would bring us all these nanotech articles trying to convince us that it was possible. She dragged the case out for 4 years convinced that he has done all kinds of illegal stuff, like destroyed her car brakes so she would crash and putting poison into her tap water. She was nuts. We almost had to get a conservator for her estate. My first divorce case was the most memorable. My client was a nice-looking, 50-ish waitress who was breaking hearts at the local small-town cafe. She was on divorce number 5. I had a little lawyer kit of things she should do: clean out the joint accounts, change the car title, etc. She had done all of them, plus a few things neither I nor the professional list maker had thought of. Husband number 5 came into my office to cry and concede everything. Now that was a guy who needed a lawyer with a list. No such luck. She screwed him over gently and professionally, I thought, didn't overreach too much, but got everything she was or might have been entitled to, plus a little more. Was easy peasy for me. Helps if your first time is with an experienced woman. I learned a lot. Law student here. I worked for a semester for my county counsel's office representing the public administrator, which is probate. A woman married a wealthy doctor in Santa Monica. Californians know where I'm talking about. After a few years of marriage, she runs off with her boyfriend to my county, and steals the motorhome in the process. Not only that, but she changed the mailing address of every bill the couple was responsible for. Doctor files for divorce. But 2 weeks before the divorce trial, she is hit by a car in a parking lot and is killed. Her estate is suing the driver for wrongful death. There is a heavy dispute between her mother and the doctor about what, if anything, the estate is owed with regards to the doctor's money. When she changed the mailing address to the bills, her stepson's car insurance stopped being paid, and he got in an accident. So the doctor is suing her estate for an insurance tort. And for the missing motorhome. Which we still can't find. I've been married for 8 years and in a relationship with my wife for 11. She's my best friend in the entire world and often my reason for living. We share everything with each other, we keep no secrets, and all of our rules can basically be broken down into don't go to bed mad. We've been in all of 2 real arguments the entire time we've been together, and both were resolved in a day. Since we started dating we've talked every single day regardless of what's going on, and we always tell each other about our days. What I'm trying to say is, don't let these stories make you give up on love. Just make sure that you're with the right person for the right reasons. Make sure you both want to be there and want the same things out of life. People say things like not the person I married, but really they just never knew each other and got married for dumb superficial reasons. With the exception of mental illness, the person you marry isn't going to drastically change who they are overnight. They'll grow as a person, and if you're with them the way you should be you'll grow together, not apart.